10th principle. One of the ways I try to think about this is to try to constantly break us out of just thinking about permaculture for food. Is that I've been fortunate enough to restructure professionally what I do so that I have more variety. When I worked for the state, I felt incredibly secure until somebody came in as a governor who didn't think that planners were all that important. Then all of a sudden, I was dispensable, which was a new concept to me. So I decided never again did I want to be in a situation where I was only having one thing to fall back on that somebody else controlled. And it is scary at times. So I have an office on the site that I built, which is a whole other story, but I'm working as a planning consultant. I'm working as adjunct professor at 2 schools in New Hampshire, teaching permaculture classes, workshops, full classes, all that. It gives me variety. And the economy has been shaky. We all know that. So when the economy is a little shaky, in one of them there's not a big demand, I have other stuff to fall back on. So, and I can add to that. I'm looking to add other aspects to that, which give me a little bit more variety, which give me a lot more resilience in my life. I feel a little bit more sure-footed. We can think of this variety when we think about the type of annual crops or perennial crops we're growing. So thinking about lots of different types of squash instead of growing all one variety and having something horribly bad happen that year, not be the right conditions. You know, a couple of years ago, you just grew all the tomatoes and nothing else in New Hampshire. We had pretty bad blight. And even, these are some chicks that are now big girls, but different kinds of chicks. We have 4 different varieties of chickens, and 3 different varieties of chickens. But they're all different, and they all do better at different times in the winter. And so there have been a constant stream of eggs. Not everyone's producing, but everyone's getting along, having a good life, and that works out. It works out well. We're almost through the principles. The 11th principle is using edges and valuing the marginal. This whole idea of edge or edge effect gets back to the core of permaculture, which is an ecology. And we think about how in natural systems, so if you're interested in birds, if you're a birder, you think about forested systems that have been cleared. There's a clearing, and then there's a woodland edge. And there's a lot of activity at the edge of that field. There are like ecotones that are meeting, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot for the birds, so they're there. I think of Narragansett Bay, because we're in Rhode Island, estuary, fresh and saltwater mixing, lots of different species coming together, just as, you know, animals are mating, and there's food being grown underwater. I mean, there's all this richness. There's a lot of diversity. We can mirror that in our ecosystems, in our forested landscapes, in our perennial and annual beds. One of the things that's often done in permaculture systems are keyhole gardens, which you'll see pictures of in a couple minutes. The left-hand side shows a small keyhole garden. And by creating curves and more natural shapes to things, we can create lots of additional edge in the garden, which provides places for predatory insects, what we call sometimes beneficial insects, to hunt and eat the ones we call pests. It creates all these different opportunities for heat and cool and different plants to have different conditions that they really favor. We can also do that with water. We can bring in and create upland and water habitats in all these rich places where water and land meet, where you have different species that weren't there before. When we brought water into the site as a feature with a couple small ponds, all of a sudden we had frogs, and we had different life on the land than we had ever seen before on the small half acre that we had. So this can be done really effectively. The last principle is creatively using and responding to change. This is really important because things are going to change. Our goals are going to change. We went down the road of thinking we're going to be like the next big nut orchard in Smithfield, Rhode Island or something. And then all of a sudden we realized, oh, well, actually we want to do rice too. And we want to figure out how to work these things in as we evolve and as the problems of the community or the problems of the world evolve. Creatively using responding to change in design classes, when we think about what are you going to plan? Like, what are you going to plan? Are you going to build a wonderful building, nice natural building? Zach's available. You can have him build something for you. And then put like this black walnut tree that you're also really excited about, like 2 feet away from the building. It's going to be a 100-foot tall tree. That's not a good relationship. When we start doing forest gardens, as they've done here in Smithfield, we need to think about what's the mature size of these trees. And when you plant them far apart, you may have big, open, sunny spaces in between that you've also mulched, which now you can grow annuals for a while. Or you can do soil building, or you can have some other intervention, knowing that over time it's going to get shaded out by the primary thing that you're there for. in thinking about creatively using and responding to change, we also refer to this in permaculture as the problem is the solution. So some of you know the story, but we had a situation where we had a problem. We had water on our property. We'd been there a couple of years. We'd never had standing water along the side of the driveway. And it was largely because of a development that was happening up the hill from us, and they had done a tremendous amount of blasting to get the subdivision road in to meet the town requirements. And they had cleared a lot of the surface vegetation to show the amazing views of the White Mountains. So now water was just coming off this hillside, and it was coming out of cracks and crevices in the ground where it never had before, on a very wet hill. So water was like bubbling out of the ground. We also learned that part of that was there was a small pinhole in the water line, which I had asked about numerous times, and they said there was not a small pinhole in the water line, but there was. So these two things were happening at the same time. We had water that was emerging, and that was a problem. Like, it was kind of a problem when all of a sudden everything starts freezing and water's still running. Now it's freezing on your driveway. Now it's creating a glacier and trying to march into your garage. And so you're having to come home and like smash ice every night. That was a problem. When I kept trying to reflect on like how do we deal with this, I realized I had water, fresh water, coming out of the ground at the highest point of our property. And all it wanted to do was move across our property. And it wanted to move wherever I wanted to send it. So what we did was we intentionalized it. We collected it in a pond. So now we had a place where we were catching it. And now we could direct it. We could decide where the overflow was going to be. We could decide where else it was going to go next, which was another small pond, which is now a rice paddy. And then we could decide where it was going to overflow in a storm event from there. But we started to infiltrate it into the ground. We started to have water for hand watering. We created habitat. Like all these wonderful yields, it wasn't a problem anymore. And that was like the blessing. Permaculture design takes many forms. It's often looking at a property or a series of properties together. But we've had students do permaculture designs for businesses. One was a baby clothing business. People are starting to use permaculture design and use a process a little different than this, looking at local currency and local economic systems. So like the ways it can be applied are really, really varied and continuing to grow. From a property perspective, which many of you may be interested in, maybe why you're here tonight, the most basic form that I can express to you of the design process is that we do the observation. We really research and analyze the site. And we may go back and talk to people that have been there before us, and we may spend time. And if it's a new site, like you're buying land to do a new house, you may go camp on the land. You may know that you're not going to buy the land and start building the next week, but you're going to spend time actually studying and seeing how it is in different seasons. Then there are lots of other layers of information where we map soil conditions, and we map the climate, and we map the infrastructure and other regulatory and legal considerations. Are there easements? Are there setback requirements? What's the topography? There's a whole list of things that we map. And one of the other things we look at is how are we going to be on the land? These are just a list of what we call zones. And zone 0 is the place we are the most. Zone 0 now we're often referring to ourselves, like our bodies as zone 0, to make sure we're thinking about ourselves and our own health. But we think about like our house or our workshop. That's where we are. How frequently am I going to go to other parts of the property? Do I go out to feed chickens? Do I go out to meditate? Do I never go there because I don't like it? And we map out these zones, how frequently we go. How frequently do I want to go there? Do I want an excuse to go there and see the beautiful view or to check on an annual garden so we can play around with the zones that way? Creating the design is not the final thing. Creating the design, this isn't always linear. Some students start creating a design and get so excited about what they're doing, and they don't want to wait, and they go out and they start implementing, and they learn they made a mistake, and they go back and they tweak their design. So it can be, there are many different styles. All styles are welcome. It can happen in lots of different ways. But in the end, we want to be out implementing something. We want to be out making change. We want to be out learning. We want to be out interacting.